Hello, and welcome back to the Nourish with Regina podcast, where we're talking about transforming your plate and transforming your life. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Regina, a certified nutrition coach, wife, mom of 4 adult children, and today I'm especially excited to be coming to you from my new podcast studio. It's earthy, it's cozy, it's beautiful. I have an amazing view, and honestly, it feels like the perfect place to have the conversation that we're going to be having today. Because this podcast has always been about helping people understand their bodies better so they can stop fighting against them and start working with them, today's topic is one of the best examples of that. And I'm so excited for this. For years, I thought healthy eating was mostly about what not to eat. Don't eat too many carbs, watch your calories, don't eat sugar, eat less, move more. And honestly, I spent years thinking about food way more than I should have, focusing on restriction, focusing on counting calories, and years worrying about that number on the scale. Looking back now, I realize I had a major problem with my approach. I wasn't spending enough time thinking about nourishment and how to support my body. Uh, Being under your calorie goal and nourishing your body aren't always the same thing. You can technically stay within a calorie target and still feel to give your body the protein, fiber, vitamins, minerals, and nutrients that it truly needs to thrive. One of the reasons I am so passionate about this topic is because I know what it's like to have a complicated relationship with food. For years, I struggled with disordered eating and a very healthy mindset around nutrition. Food became about control for me. Um, Numbers, restriction, fear, a very negative relationship with food. Years of hating the way I looked and the way I felt and being defeated in that. And and even though restriction and all that may help someone lose weight temporarily, it's often at a very tremendous cost. And I don't want you to have to learn that the hard way like I did. But having that kind of relationship with food often will damage your metabolism. It can, again, damage your relationship with food, which is a whole emotional thing then to overcome as well. Uh, and most importantly, it can disconnect you from your body's actual needs. Thankfully, over time, I learned something that completely changed how I approach nutrition. I stopped asking, what do I need to avoid? And started asking, what does my body need to heal? What does my body need to feel better, to be more energized, to support me in my everyday life? And that simple shift changed everything. As I learned about nutrition and I realized I wasn't getting nearly enough protein, I wasn't paying any attention to fiber at all, and I wasn't really thinking about blood sugar. And because of that, I was constantly hungry. I had energy crashings. I experienced rabid cravings, where you think about food so much or a certain food that you just like can't think about anything else. Um, I thought about every single thing I wanted to eat for the entire day way too much. And not in a way that was like I was looking forward to eating certain things. It was like, if I eat this, then I can't eat that kind of relationship. So it was not healthy at all. I mean, have you ever eaten a meal just to feel hungry again an hour later? Or found yourself standing in the pantry looking for something sweet in the middle of the afternoon? I know we've all been there. Or for a lot of us, we come to 3 o'clock in the afternoon and our energy has completely disappeared. Most people will assume those things are willpower problems, but what they actually are is a physiology problem. What if your body is simply responding to the fuel that it's been receiving? That's what we're going to talk about today. Today's episode is one of the simplest strategies I've ever learned for supporting energy, reducing cravings, and staying feeling full longer, and helping to support a healthy blood sugar. Surprisingly, it isn't necessarily about eating different foods, but it's about eating the same foods in a different order. Now, I know that sounds almost too simple, and I do want you to stick with me and hear me out on this because I think you're going to be as excited about this as I was when I first read it. Once you understand the science behind it, it is absolutely fascinating. So, first, I want to talk about why blood sugar is a human issue and not just a diabetes issue. So, before we go any further, I want to spend some time clearing up a common misconception. Um, the moment people hear the term blood sugar, they immediately think, "Oh, I don't have diabetes. This doesn't apply to me." And that's understandable. That's a lot of times when we talk about or have heard the term blood sugar, it is in relationship to being diabetic. But blood sugar is not just a diabetes conversation because every single person listening to this podcast has blood sugar every day, every meal, every snack. All of us do. And blood sugar simply refers to the amount of glucose that is circulating in your bloodstream at any one given moment. Glucose is also your body's primary fuel. So it's going to be the primary source of energy for your body. And your brain uses glucose to help power concentration, focus, memory, decision making, and countless other mental functions. In fact, although your brain only makes up 2% of your body weight, it uses roughly 20% of your body's energy that you consume every day. That's one reason people often notice blood sugar instability first in their brain. You'd get the brain fog. You're going to get the difficulty concentrating, feeling mentally sluggish, trouble staying focused. So not only your brain, but your muscles rely on glucose as well. So whether you're exercising, cleaning your house, carrying groceries, gardening, taking a walk through a parking lot, your muscles require energy. And glucose is one of the primary ways your body provides that energy to your muscles. Your organs depend on glucose as well. So your heart, your kidneys, your liver, your entire digestive system, every one of them requires a constant supply of energy to function properly. So the goal is not to eliminate glucose. The goal is to provide a steady, reliable source of energy rather than putting your body in a constant roller coaster. Blood sugar also doesn't just affect energy either. It also affects hormones. It affects the communication that goes through your entire body. So let's start with hunger first. When your blood sugar rises quickly and then falls quickly, the brain often interprets that drop as a need for more fuel. That's one reason that you can feel hungry very shortly after eating a meal that was low in protein, low in fiber, maybe high in carbs. I know we've all heard that certain, rice-filled dishes is one example. If you eat them and then you're feeling hungry an hour later, it's because that carb source is the main source that you're getting from that meal. A lot of people will blame themselves. They'll think they lack discipline. They think they should be able to resist a craving, but often the body is responding to physiology. So blood sugar will also affect hormones. And I'm not just talking about insulin. Insulin itself is a hormone, but it interacts with many other hormones in the body. So research has actually shown that blood sugar regulation can influence reproductive hormones, which is one reason that blood sugar balance is such an important conversation to have with my clients dealing with PCOS, perimenopause, and menopause. Blood sugar can also affect inflammation. So repeated large spikes and crashes can contribute to oxidative stress in the body and inflammatory processes within the body over time. So I'm not saying one cookie is going to cause inflammation. That's not really how it works. But our daily patterns matter. And the body is constantly responding to those patterns. Then there's insulin. And honestly, insulin may be one of the most misunderstood hormones in nutrition because insulin isn't bad. It's actually essential for our bodies. Without insulin, glucose couldn't effectively move from your bloodstream into the cells that need it. So the problem isn't insulin. The problem is when the body is constantly being asked to manage dramatic swings in blood sugar throughout the day. Over time, what happens is that the system can become less efficient. And that's one reason why learning to support stable blood sugar can have such a wide reaching effect on how we feel. Energy, cravings, appetite, hormone, mood, focus, even long term health. And that is why I believe blood sugar is one of the most important nutrition conversations we can have, and why we have it a lot here on this podcast. So, I want to introduce you to the study that changed how I think about food. I want to tell you about one of the most fascinating nutrition studies I've ever came across. So, a few years ago, researchers at Weill Cornell Medicine published a study in the journal Diabetes Care with a title that sounds incredibly scientific called Food Order Has Significant Impact on Postprandial Glucose and Insulin Levels. Now, don't let that title scare you, because the question they were asking was actually a very simple question. Does the order that we eat our food in matter? Not the calories, not the portions, not even the food themselves, but the order. So just think about that for a minute. What happened is the researchers gave participants the exact same meal on two different occasions. It was the same exact people, the same exact meals, the same exact calories, same carbohydrates, same proteins, same vegetables. The only thing they changed was which food the participants ate first. One time they ate all the carbs on the plate first. Another time they ate the protein and the vegetables first and saved the carbohydrates for last. And what they found was remarkable. So, when participants ate the protein and the vegetables first, their blood sugar levels were significantly lower after their meal. Their insulin response was lower too. So think about that for a second. Food didn't change, the calories didn't change, the portions didn't change. The order changed, and their physiology changed because of that. So when I first learned about this study, I remember thinking, wait a minute, you're telling me I don't necessarily need an entirely different meal. Sometimes I just need a different strategy. And honestly, to me, that sounds incredibly freeing. Because I think a lot of people believe they need to completely overhaul their entire lives before they can start feeling better. But sometimes the most powerful changes we can do are very, very simple. So now, before anyone thinks, great, another nutrition trick, I want to talk about why this works. Because the why is really important. Because once you understand the physiology, it starts making perfect sense. So let's talk about what happens when carbohydrates arrive first. We're going to imagine a pretty typical American breakfast. So maybe it's a bagel, or toast and jam, or a muffin and coffee, or a bowl of cereal. A lot of people love to have cereal for breakfast. None of these foods are inherently evil. And I want to be very clear about that. It's not a good food versus bad food conversation. We're having a physiology conversation. So I want to walk through what happens when you eat carbohydrates. Your digestive system begins breaking them down into smaller glucose molecules. That glucose enters your bloodstream, and then your blood sugar rises. Your pancreas will release insulin, and insulin helps move that glucose into your cells where it can be used for energy. You follow? Okay. Again, insulin is not the villain here. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. It's really doing its job. The challenge comes when large amounts of glucose enter the bloodstream very quickly. Imagine dumping a bucket of water in a sink all at once. The sink can handle it, but it has to work very quickly. So that's similar to what happens when we consume large amounts of carbohydrates, rapidly digesting carbohydrates by themselves. Blood sugar rises quickly, insulin rises quickly, energy rises quickly. So it causes like this influx of glucose and energy to our body. And then often the energy falls. The blood sugar begins dropping, the brain notices, the body starts looking for more fuel because our body wants to stay at a steady level. And suddenly you're hungry again. Have you ever eaten breakfast at 7 in the morning only to be starving again by 9:30? That bowl of cereal didn't carry you throughout your morning because it was fast digesting carbohydrates. That is the pattern I'm talking about right now. Not because you did anything wrong, not because you're weak, not because you lack discipline. Your body is responding exactly the way it was designed to respond. And this is where so many people get frustrated. They assume they're hungry because they need more willpower, when they're often hungry because their breakfast set them up to be hungry. Those are two very different conversations, right? So one of the most important things I learned as a nutrition coach is that people often blame themselves for things that are actually rooted in biology. So let's say your breakfast was primarily refined carbohydrates. We're going to go back to our bowl of cereal again. So you eat your cereal, your blood sugar rises quickly, and then it falls. Your brain notices the drop. And remember, your brain loves stability. Your brain doesn't like feeling like it's running low on fuel. So what does it do? It starts encouraging you to find more. That's where cravings often show up. Not because you're broken, not because you're lazy, not because you're addicted to food. Sometimes your body is simply trying to solve an energy problem. And honestly, I think that's one of the most freeing things people can learn, because it shifts the conversation from I need more discipline to I need to support my physiology. And that is a great mindset to have when we're looking at health and long-term sustainable health. It's also one of the reasons that I stopped focusing solely on calories years ago. Now, calories absolutely matter. Energy balance matters, but calories don't tell the whole story. Two meals can contain identical calories and produce very different experiences. So I want you to think about that. Two meals can contain identical calories and produce very different experiences. One meal can leave you feeling full and satisfied and energized, and the other can leave you hungry, craving snacks, and thinking about food all afternoon. The difference comes down to how those calories are packaged. Protein, fiber, healthy fats, and yes, even the order which we eat them. So let's flip the script a little bit here. So I want you to imagine a different breakfast. Instead of starting with toast, you start with the eggs. Instead of eating fruit by itself, which fruit a lot of time has higher carbohydrates and it's very easily digested, it digests quickly, you're going to pair that fruit with some Greek yogurt. Instead of drinking your calories through a sweet coffee, you prioritize protein first. So now what happens? The entire digestive process changes. And this is where things get really fascinating. Protein and fiber act almost like natural speed bumps. They slow digestion, they slow gastric emptying, they slow the rate at which glucose enters the bloodstream. So instead of a flood, you're getting a steady stream. Instead of a roller coaster, you're getting stability. And stability is exactly what your body is looking for. Because when blood sugar stays steadier, energy stays steadier, appetite stays steadier, cravings become quieter, and many people find themselves thinking about food much less often. So now let's talk about why protein deserves so much credit here. Before we go any further, I want to share something kind of personal. Because when we talk about blood sugar and protein and fiber and nourishment, I'm not speaking from some perfect place where I've always had this figured out. Far from it. I remember an appointment with my endocrinologist, and I was sitting in his office and I was crying. Um, Not because I had received some devastating diagnosis, but because I felt defeated. I had gone there hoping for answers, hoping someone would finally explain why I felt so stuck, why my body wasn't responding the way I thought it should, why I was working so hard and had so little to show for it. And I remember him telling me there really wasn't anything he could do. I just needed to eat healthier and lose weight. I think he did suggest a vegan diet, and maybe for some people that works. But what struck me that nobody ever asked me was what I was actually eating. Nobody asked me how much time I spent thinking about food. Nobody asked me what my relationship with food looked like. Nobody asked how many diets I had already tried. And sitting there, I remember thinking, this man has absolutely no idea. He had no idea that I think about every single bite that goes into my body. He had no idea that I spend my day doing food math, calculating calories, trying to stay in a deficit, restricting foods I enjoy, avoiding foods I had convinced myself I wasn't allowed to have. He had no idea how much mental energy this already was taking. And at that point in my life, I had tried so many diets. I had restricted so many foods. I had spent years believing that if I could just find the right diet, the right plan, the right amount of willpower, everything would finally click. And honestly, I felt hopeless because I was doing everything I knew to do, everything that I thought was right, and nothing was working. Looking back now, I realized something important. I wasn't lacking discipline. I wasn't lacking effort. Um, what I was lacking was information. No one had ever taught me how to properly nourish my body. No one had ever really explained protein. Nobody had ever explained fiber in a deep way. Nobody had ever explained blood sugar until I was diagnosed pre-diabetic. Nobody had ever explained that full feeling, energized and satisfied wasn't about eating less. It was about eating differently. And I often think about how different my journey might have been had someone taught me this many years earlier. And this is one of the reasons I am so passionate about sharing this now with you. Because if you're listening today and you're feeling frustrated or defeated, I want you to know something. You probably don't need more willpower. You probably just need support and better information. And once I started learning how the body actually works, everything began to change. One of the biggest shifts that I made in my own health journey was learning how important protein really is. And honestly, for years, I barely even thought about it. I thought about calories. I thought about fat. I thought about carbs. But protein wasn't really even on my radar. Now looking back, that explains a lot. Um, because once I started intentionally increasing my protein, one of the first things I noticed is it wasn't weight loss. It wasn't muscle gain. It wasn't even improved body composition. One of the first things I noticed was peace. I stopped thinking about food all the time. I stopped feeling like I needed a snack to keep going, or feeling like I was starving and plotting what I was allowed to eat at the next meal. I stopped standing in the pantry looking for some healthy alternative to fill that hunger feeling in the middle of the afternoon. And there's a real science explanation for why that happens. Protein is considered the most satiating macronutrient. In simple terms, protein helps us feel full longer than carbohydrates and fats alone. Researchers have found that protein influences several of our hormones involved in appetite regulation. So these are hormones like GLP-1, which we've all, been hearing a lot about recently. The PYY hormone and the CKK hormones. And now I know these names sound intimidating and you're like, what the heck is she talking about? But here's what they actually do. What these hormones do is they will send signals to the brain that says, we've eaten, we've had enough, and we can stop now. At the same time, protein helps reduce levels of ghrelin, often called our hunger hormone. So think of ghrelin as a hormone that rings the dinner bell. Okay. When ghrelin rises, your body becomes interested in finding food. When ghrelin decreases, hunger often becomes quieter. So protein turns that volume down. And this is one of the reasons a breakfast built around protein often feels dramatically different than a breakfast built primarily around refined carbohydrates. So let's compare two breakfasts. Breakfast number one, a bagel flavored coffee. Breakfast number two is going to be 2 eggs, Greek yogurt, and a handful of berries. The calories here aren't dramatically different, but the physiological response is very, very different in what's going to happen in your body with these two different breakfasts. So one meal is going to create fullness, and the other meal is going to create a hunger rebound. That's not because the bagel is evil. It's because the meals are sending two very different messages to our body. And this is why I tell clients, don't just ask yourself what I can remove. Ask yourself what you can add. Like if you love having that bagel for breakfast, I'm not saying don't eat the bagel. I'm saying what can you add to the bagel so it doesn't cause that huge, quick spike and drop in your blood sugar. Adding protein is often one of the most powerful changes people can make. So how much protein do we actually need? So this is one very common question I get a lot. And unfortunately, it's also one of the areas where many people are unintentionally under eating. I am here telling you, you get to eat more of something. So the recommended dietary allowance, or the RDA, for protein is about 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight, which sounds very mathy. Here's something I want you to understand. The RDA is designed to prevent deficiency. So it's not necessarily designed to support optimal health, muscle maintenance, active lifestyles, aging, or body composition goals. Many experts now recommend a significantly higher protein intake, especially for active adults, individuals over 40, and anyone trying to maintain muscle while losing body fat. So a good practical range for many adults is somewhere between 0.7 to 1 grams of protein per pound of ideal body weight. I like using the 1 because it makes the math really easy. So if your goal weight is 150 pounds, so that may mean eating roughly 105 to 150 grams of protein a day. Now, before anyone panics, remember, you don't have to hit perfection tomorrow, okay? It's a process. We're talking about direction, not perfection. And one strategy I love, especially if you're getting started and you're learning what things are good sources of protein or not, is aiming for around 30 to 35 grams of protein at each meal. So 3 meals a day already gets you to at least 90 grams of protein. Add in a protein rich snack, and suddenly you're much more closer than you think. And so just think about starting there. And then, we can talk about how to boost those protein intakes throughout the day in different ways. So let's think about some examples of roughly 30 grams of protein. 5 ounces of grilled chicken breast. 1 cup Greek yogurt plus a scoop of protein powder. 4 eggs. Now, to me, that seems like a lot of eggs, or 2 eggs and some egg whites added, and a few ounces of turkey sausage. You got your 30. Cottage cheese. This is one of my favorite easy protein meals that I do. Cottage cheese paired with additional lean protein, or I like a whole full scoop of cottage cheese with some tomatoes in it. That's like my go-to breakfast. If you've been listening to this podcast for any amount of time, you probably already know that. But cottage cheese, great source of protein. A protein smoothie that's built intentionally to hit that 30 grams. Protein doesn't have to be complicated. It just has to be intentional. So when we think about meal planning or what we're eating for breakfast, I would like to encourage everyone to start with the protein. Then we're going to talk about fiber. And fiber deserves much more attention than it gets. Because if protein is the nutrient getting all the attention these days, fiber might be the nutrient quietly doing some of the most important work. And here's something that honestly shocked me when I first learned it, and it might be a little shocking to you too, but approximately 95% of Americans do not consume the recommended amount of fiber. 95% of Americans are not getting the fiber support that their body needs. That's a big number. Think about that. 19 out of every 20 people are falling short. So in fact, the average American only consumes about 15 to 16 grams of fiber a day. Meanwhile, recommendations are 25 grams per day for women and 38 grams a day for men. That means many people are getting only about half of what their bodies actually need to support and to function optimally. And when most people think about fiber, they think about digestion, maybe constipation, maybe staying regular. Fiber does way more than that. Fiber helps support healthy blood sugar. Fiber helps support cholesterol levels. Fiber feeds beneficial bacteria in the gut that's going to support your gut microbiome. Fiber also supports satiation, like it's going to help you feel fuller longer. And actually, fiber may even help reduce the risk of chronic disease like heart disease and type 2 diabetes. So that's pretty impressive resume for a nutrient that most people rarely think about. One of my favorite ways to describe fiber is this. Fiber acts as a natural brake pedal. So remember earlier when we talked about glucose entering the bloodstream, fiber helps slow that process down. Instead of glucose rushing into the bloodstream all at once, fiber helps create a more gradual release. That means steadier energy, steadier hunger levels, and often fewer cravings. So here's where it gets practical, because people always ask what foods actually contain fiber. So let's talk numbers. 1 cup of raspberries, about 8 grams of fiber. 1 medium avocado, about 10 grams of fiber. 1 tablespoon of chia seeds, 5 grams of fiber. Half a cup of black beans, 7 to 8 grams of fiber. 1 medium pear, 6 grams. A cup of cooked broccoli, 5 grams. Those numbers can add up quickly. And when you combine protein and fiber together, something really powerful happens. You're supporting satiation from multiple angles. You're helping support blood sugar from multiple angles. You're feeding your gut microbiome. And you're creating meals that actually work with your body instead of against it. Now, ladies, we're going to have a little quick conversation here to the side because blood sugar becomes increasingly important as we age. As women move through perimenopause and menopause, estrogen levels begin to fluctuate. And those hormonal shifts can influence insulin sensitivity. So many women in their more advanced years of life will notice abdominal weight gain, stronger cravings, energy crashes, changes in appetite, difficulty losing weight, and often they will blame themselves. Or they'll just blame aging, which is partially true. But sometimes what's happening is physiology, not failure. This is also why blood sugar support is such an important conversation with women with PCOS. Research has consistently shown that insulin resistance plays a major role in cases of PCOS. And while today's episode isn't specifically about PCOS, it's another example of how blood sugar affects far more than diabetic risk. It affects your entire body. So what is the best part about all of this? And here's what I love most. It isn't about perfection. Good news here. You don't need to swear off bread. You don't need to eliminate carbohydrates. You don't need to fear fruit. You don't need to obsess over every single meal. You simply need to understand how your body works. Because once you understand the physiology, healthy choices start feeling less restrictive and more empowering. And I want you to feel empowered. You are no longer fighting your body. You're working with your body to create amazing things. And that is a completely different experience than we've been given with the diet culture options throughout the past 30 years. The things I love most about nutrition is that it doesn't have to be complicated. Sometimes we just need to know what to do with the information. I want to come back to something I talk about a lot, and that's stewardship. Because the more I learn about nutrition, the more I realize that taking care of our bodies isn't about punishment. It's not about restriction. It's not about earning our food. It's about understanding the incredible design God created. When we understand how the body works, we can care for it more effectively. And honestly, that is freeing. Because for years, I believed health required more discipline, more restriction, more rules. Now I realize it requires more understanding. My body is not my enemy, it is a gift. My body is constantly communicating with me. It is responding, it is adapting, it is trying to keep me alive. And when we learn to work with it instead of against it, things start feeling easier. Not effortless, because anything worth having is worth working hard for, right? But it's easier. Sometimes stewardship looks like choosing protein first. Sometimes it looks like adding more vegetables. Sometimes it looks like taking a walk after dinner. Small choices, repeated consistently, that's where transformation happens. Our bodies are capable of incredibly amazing things. And we have to support them in doing that. Not out of just respect for ourselves, but out of respect for our Creator, who has entrusted this body to us. It's the only one you're going to get. It is a gift to you. Let's start appreciating and loving that gift. So if you take one thing away from today's episode, let it be this. You do not need more willpower. You may simply need better physiology. So at your next meal, I want you to try this. Protein first, fiber second, carbohydrates last. Then pay attention. I want you to notice your energy. I want you to notice your hunger. Notice your cravings. Because once you start understanding how your body responds, you'll never look at your meals quite the same way again. If this episode was helpful, I would love for you to share it with friends or family who could benefit from it. And if you're enjoying the podcast, don't forget to please hit the subscribe button. New episodes drop every Tuesday at 11 a.m., and I'd hate for you to miss any of them. You can also find me on Facebook and Instagram at Nourish with Regina, where I share recipes, nutrition tips, and practical ways to support your health without perfection or overwhelm. If you're looking for additional support, I would love to help you. You can learn more about my individual coaching, group coaching, and wellness programs at www.nourishwithregina.com. Next week, we're talking about something every single one of us has experienced: what to eat when you don't feel like cooking. Because let's be honest, some days we're motivated, and some days we're inspired, and some days we are not. So some days we stare into the refrigerator hoping dinner magically appears. We'll talk about grocery shortcuts, balanced convenient foods, simple, throw together meals that are going to hit that protein, fiber, and fat balance we need, and how to nourish yourself even when life is busy and motivation is nowhere to be found. Until next time, thank you, and keep nourishing your body one simple choice at a time.